Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I'm going to continue today in showing you the various instruments and pictures that I have of them. I think that what I like to do is to get you to recognize the instruments for what they are. So if I hold up an instrument, you know what it is by looking at it. Now, a lot of times we used to learn, I can remember as a child, first and second grade, they used to do the same thing. But I know that recently, I don't think they do it anymore because I've had people look at recorders and think they were a saxophone, or I think they were even a French horn. So they get real mixed up. So for the instruments that I do and the melody flutes, it's nice to be able to see a picture and recognize what instrument you're looking at. We're going to start out here. I have a staff on this chart here, but we'll continue with the instruments. This is the middle C or the low C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and D. And these are the fingerings for them. If you're doing recorder fingerings, and you'll notice that F has two sets of fingerings because there's some instruments that you finger a certain way and other instruments you finger another way. I know for recorders you can get Baroque recorders, which is what most people play, or you can get German recorders, which are a little easier, but most people use the Baroque because it's just a little bit more accurate in pitch. If you're not familiar with the instruments, you wouldn't know the difference. But for anyone who's playing them, it's just a little bit different. So I just want to show that later on. If we have time, I'm going to go over the fingering for every single note, but we're not going to do it now. Here's another staff. The middle C would be right here. Middle C, as I said before, is halfway between the treble and the bass clef. This is the bass clef. This is the treble clef, and this is the middle C. For most instruments that are woodwinds, we call it the low C because most instruments cannot get below it. And so this is where it is on the piano. This is where it is on the staff, and we can go C, D, E, F, G, and then it goes back to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then back to A again. Just to give you kind of a review of that, and then we'll go into it more later. This is one of the charts that I've used from C, the low middle C, which is right here, and this is the C right here. It's like the mid-range C, and this is also a C, it's right here. And this is the range of the recorder without the sharps and flats. Now, I didn't include the sharps and flats in here, but it goes from C to C to C, and this is a 2-octave range, and this is what the recorder plays. It's what a lot of the penny whistles and sassotos and some of the 2-octave range instruments can play. And when I start teaching and teach person how to play B, and this is the fingering for it, B, A, G, F, E, D, and that's like 6 notes of a scale, 8-note scale, but a lot of notes here that you can play over and over and over again. And so this is like the first scale I teach, and these are the fingerings for the notes. We'll be doing that more as we get along. Now here again, I think what I'll do is skip this one. I've done something similar. I want to show you the notes that the flute plays, which is above the high C. Here's the high C, the D, and of course you have your sharps here and flats, E, F, and then G, A, B, and C. All those high notes. I didn't point out much about the sharps and flats, but the high flute, the regular flute, can play up here. These are the ledger lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ledger lines for that C above high C, and the flute can get it, but it can't go any higher than that. But that's really very, very high. Just to show you the range of the flutes. Now I have here kind of like a fingering chart, and I want to show this to you. I drew this. This would be, I'm going to show every single note that you get, the range that you can get on the recorder. And what I did was I drew the recorder so it's kind of slanted a little, and so the notes, tone holes are a little cut out. Here's the labium, here's the mouthpiece, this is the head joint. So if we get into that, the first note that I teach is going to be the B. And the B is right here. And it's here on the staff, and this is the fingering for it. If I'm to pick up my recorder and show you, this is the B. Now, the reason that I want to start off with the B is that it's easier to balance the instrument. You've got both hands in use. It's also one of the easier notes to get. I don't want to start off with something that you have to balance. You see, you can drop an instrument pretty easily. I'm playing a C sharp, and the only way the instrument is balanced is that I have my little finger on the bottom, I have my mouth, and I have my thumb hole here that I do cover. No left hand. So it's easier if you're learning to find the instruments, the easier notes to play, and then you just add to it. So it's easier to start with the easier notes and then just work your way down the scale, which I usually do. So that's the B. There it is on the staff. That's the fingering for it. And see, when I do fingering charts, I like to do that. You add one more and you get the A. And the tone hole in the back, the thumb hole in the back, that's closed. I have it closed in there. There's a little coloring in there. That's the A. That's where it is on the staff. Then to go down, you add one more and you get the G. Here it is on the staff. The thumb hole is still closed. Now what I've done with this instrument over here, it's the same drawing. I have listed what tone holes are used for what notes. Like here's your B, your A, but you can also use that thumb hole for that tone hole for a C and a D. Here's your G, F, E, and then D and F both for here, and down here the C. So what I'm doing is I'm showing you what tone holes are used for what notes, but taking it just from a simple scale, B, A, G, G on the staff. Then we have F. Now there's two fingerings for an F, which is why I used both of these instrument drawings here. This is the F on the staff. If you are using a German fingering, B, A, G, F, and you don't touch these down here, if you are using a Baroque fingering, which most instruments are, B, A, G, F, and then you add one more finger. I'll demonstrate it on one of these recorders here so you can see it. B, tone hole covered in the back, thumb hole covered in the back. B, A, G, F. Now if I add that one finger, you're going to skip this note here and not use it. Add one more finger. Do you see the difference in the pitch? As opposed to adding that other finger, it actually makes the note a little bit deeper, a little bit flatter. But that's the accurate tone. If you were doing a German instrument, and I don't have a German instrument here, but it would look exactly the same. But you wouldn't put that second fingering down. You just keep it, and then EDC. But with the Baroque fingering, you put that other finger down, and it makes it just slightly more accurate. How do you know when you have a Baroque instrument? They are exactly the way, I mean, they look exactly the same. On the thumb hole in the back, there will be above it. I don't know if we can pick it up. I know I have in the past, but there's a little tiny B. Now, it's the same color as the rest of the instrument. It's just raised a little bit. If you see a little B anywhere around the thumb hole in the back, then you've got a Baroque instrument. This is a Baroque instrument. They do pitch a little better, but that's the only way you're going to know, because they do look exactly alike. So to continue from that, this would be the German fingering F. The note is the same. It's right here. And that's the Baroque fingering for F on a Baroque instrument. And it just, depends upon the instrument that you're playing. Then the E, you just add one more note, B, A, G, F, E. Notice the tone hole is still closed in the back. That's E, and this is where it is on the staff. We are going down from the B down to the low D. B, A, G, F, E, D, and the tone hole, the tone hole in the back is still covered. It's not that hard when you stop to think of it. And then you have your low C. That's a little harder to get. B, A, G, F, E, D, and then C. By that time, every note is covered in your instrument. And this is where it is on the staff, the low C. So you have covered everything. Now the high D is just right here. This is the C, this is the D, and you don't have that tone hole covered. It's left blank. You actually take your thumb off from it, or you lower it so it's not covered, and you only have one note. This one's not covered, then nothing else is covered, so I probably need to demonstrate that for you. So here's your C. So what I do to get the D is I simply pull the thumb off from the back. This is it, the only note, and you get a high D that way. And it comes in very easily, And then to get above it would be an E. Then you use a regular fingering for the E, but you pull down the thumb and half hold it. So you don't leave it up, it just half hold it from the low D to the high D. It makes a nice little exercise in octaves. That's the high D. Now the E, as I mentioned before, you put your thumb hole down again, your thumb over it, but you half cover it. So that's what I did here. What I did was I just drew it black halfway, and the rest of it, if you can see it, is open. So your E, B, A, G, F, E, and then the tone hole is covered halfway. That gives you an octave up. If you put the whole thumb down, you would get the low E, which would be right here if I drew it in. But I want the high D, so we half hold that tone hole in the back, and that's how you get that octave. Now I'm going to try to show you. Here's the low E. If I turn it over, you see, if you can, I mean, it's hard to do this, the tone hole in the back is covered. So I wanted an octave up. You wouldn't even know I'd moved my hand, but if you look in the back, if I can show it to you, it's half covered. Just pull it down a little bit, but only halfway. If you pull it down all the way, you won't get the note. All I have to do is pull it down a little bit, and I will get that octave up. And a lot of notes it really works for, so that's something you need to remember. With F, it's the same thing. I've half-holed here and B, A, G, F. Or if I'm using a Baroque, B, A, G, F, skip one, and then that other note goes down, like I did before. But if I use the half-holding on the tone hole in the back, I get the octave. So it's just a case of whatever fingering is appropriate, just pull the thumb down in the back, you will get the octave for it. It works for many, many notes. With G, it's the same thing. B, A, G, and this is half hold in the back. This is the high G. The low G is going to be the same thing, but if you want the low G, you keep your thumb covered. So it's not that hard to do an octave on the recorder. Most instruments like clarinets, flutes, saxophones, they have what's called an octave key, or sometimes called a register key. For saxophone, it's an octave key. You press it down, you get an octave. It's just simple. For a register key, it would be like the clarinet. The clarinet, if you do that, you don't get an octave, you get an octave plus 5 notes. So it operates a little differently, and you really have to learn 2 sets of fingerings for the clarinet. Excuse me a moment. Clarinets are beautiful, and I love them, one of my favorite instruments, but they're fairly hard to play. Because when you want an octave, you may press a key and you're going to get an octave and 5 notes. So what you have to do is learn a whole separate set of fingering patterns for the clarinet, the lower register and the higher register. They're different fingerings, and that's the reason why it's a register key, it's not an octave key, because you get a whole different register. Going from the lower register to a higher register in the clarinet is not an easy thing to do. And when you do it, it's called crossing the break. You don't get that terminology for the other instruments, but it's the same thing. You go up another register, you go up another octave, it's crossing the break, because it's a harder thing to do. Here is the A, and you half hold that. The little thumb hole in the back gets half hold, that's the A. The B is a little different, and we would be quite a while before we learn how to play it, but this would be the fingerings. 2 on top, skip 1, 2 on the bottom. So it gets by the A, B, and C, the high A, B, and C. It gets a little bit more complicated in the fingering pattern. And you see there's a ledger line here. It's getting to be high. Now, here's the high C, and you can see also there's a difference in the fingering pattern. 1 up here, 2 down here, half hole. So it's 1 up here, 2 down here, and half hole. So it's a little bit harder to remember. We'll get to it, but not immediately. And then the F sharp, I want to show you the F sharp. It's really quite easy to do. The F is B, A, G, F. If you switch and put this finger down and lift this one up, you get the F sharp. That's all there is. If you want the regular F, switch again. That's all there is. And if you want a higher octave, you just half hold that. Okay. Now, I have a whole thing here. I don't know. I think what I'll do is I'm going to close it here because this is a whole nother section on fingering charts, and I think what I'm going to do, different kinds of fingering charts which I have made out. I've shown you one today, and I think the next time that we meet I'm going to show you another fingering chart which I have done that is also very helpful in learning how to play. So I'm going to close it here, and we'll do fingering charts next week, and so please join me then.